Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Gamers Remorse, killing gameplay, fun, challenge games, where we play the games you made for our challenge. No, that is not the official challenge name. Today we were taking a look at Sneeze. Sneeze is a 2 to 6 player set collection hand management game from Fairway 3 Games. Players will attempt to remain healthy while passing germs around the table to the other players. The last player who remains healthy is the winner. The healthy players are those with fewer than 5 diseases at the end of a round. The game begins when the deck is shuffled and each player is being dealt 3 cards, the remaining cards being set aside as a draw pile. During play, players will come across 4 types of cards: germs, antibiotics, antibodies, and pass the infections. Germs allow players to infect others while being infected themselves. There are 11 strains of germs, coming in 7 different variants. These are differentiated by picture and by color. Players can infect themselves by playing a card in front of them from their hand. Once a player is infected, they can use those same infection cards to infect another player by playing cards from their hand in front of that other player. The cards must match a strain or a variant of the diseases they have. Antibiotic cards cure all of the infections of the card's color, both in front of the player who plays the card, as well as the cards in front of the other players. Antibodies act similar to antibiotics, but only cure the infections in front of the active player who played the card. Pass the infection cards allow the active player to pass one of their infections to another player at the table. On a turn, players will draw a card and then play a card. When playing germs on other players, don't forget to sneeze. You may infect others with cards that match the strain or variant of your diseases. Once every player but one has 5 or more diseases, the remaining healthy player is deemed victorious. But don't worry your ill little heads. If you have 5 or more diseases, you can still infect others and attempt to heal yourself before someone else is deemed the victor, so that you can still come back and claim the victory. So what did Brian, Eric, and Sean think of this game? Let's find out. Alright, so we're going to start looking at the look and feel of Sneeze. The game initially is fairly interesting. You have different colors that illustrate the different diseases, and then you have different icons that illustrate the strain of the disease. So out of 2, I gave the game 1.5, in that I thought it was very clever the way they did the strains. Rather than choose 10 or 11 or however many it was, just different shapes, they actually created these cartoonized figures. So I thought that was kind of fun, added a bit of an interesting element, but then it also kind of took the game a bit outside of the realism, so it wasn't like, oh, we're dealing with influenza. It's these fun little characters smiling up at you from the cards. So all in all, like I said, I gave it 1.5. Do you guys agree, disagree?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I just thought the only thing, only a couple things that, the back of the cards are, the cultured, and much more realistic, which were a little out of place for the cartoony rest of the game. And maybe just a little differentiation on the antibodies and antibiotics. Just to kind of make one or the other stand out a little bit more, so you can, you can read at the top of the card, but maybe just like a little more color on one or the other.
Yeah. Eric also had mentioned that they could have designed this to look like a pill bottle, which would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, rather than just kind of like just all the different faces. Oh, might have been a little loud. Rather than just all the different faces of the bacteria, just make that look like a pill bottle and dumping out all the cards. I thought that might be fun, but that's because I grew up in a doctor's home.
Yeah.
All right, balance mechanics. What do you think, Eric?
I think they worked fairly well together. It took a little while to kind of know what we were doing. The differences, it was a set collection, but it wasn't.
Anti-set collection is what I would call it.
Yeah. But it was like you kind of had to collect your own to be able to infect others.
Yeah.
So that was a very interesting mechanic. So I think I'd probably give overall like a 1.5.
I think I'd agree with that. The one thing I didn't like about it is it seemed like So there was hand management in there, right? So based upon what you had to determine, what do I want to play? Because there were certainly better options than others. That was the majority of the fun in the game, is solving that problem. But it seemed like a lot of it was based on random, right? Draw one card, play one card, and there's no discard. It seems like it would have benefited from draw 2 cards, discard 1 card from your hand, play 1 card, right? Because otherwise you were just constantly stuck with no way to get rid of bad cards out of your hand. So it was, all right, well, what's the worst? The least worst option. You know, none of them were really good sometimes. No. And sometimes you ended up healing other people, but not yourself, but you weren't able to, you didn't have to play a bad card on yourself. So it just seemed like, should be more strategy there. But it was...
Yeah, and that would add a whole nother layer of analysis.
That's a good point.
Yeah. But if maybe as an action you could discard your entire hand, draw an entire new hand, and that was your turn.
And then play 2 cards on yourself.
That's just more analysis.
So, yeah, 1.5, I'd buy off on that.
I think I'd agree for the same reasons stated.
All right. So for pacing, out of 1 point, I gave it 1 point. It seemed fairly fast. It seemed like by the time it was my turn, everyone else had already gone. So I play a card, then Eric and Ryan managed to finish their turn by the time that I was still looking at my cards, figuring out what I could do, and I made my mind up, and then I would draw a card, and it only had a minimal impact, because usually it was a worse card than what I wanted to do, or it was an obvious, go play that. So it seemed pretty well paced. What your guys' opinion about the same, where it seemed like it was like clockwork almost?
Yes and no. I mean, if you drew a card that, there were times where, it was kind of like a momentary paralysis where, you'd have either an antibody or an antibiotic, and you'd kind of have to think about, okay, who has what, how much would this affect? Do I have another card that maybe would cure theirs, but I could infect them with the same one again? And
right.
So, it just momentary. But for the most part, I'd say it was right along, just moving right along.
Yeah, I mean, you only had 4 cards at any one time, so there wasn't too much AP there.
Yeah, I would completely agree.
Yeah.
Okay. What about theme? What do you think about that?
The theme I thought was really interesting. Reading ahead of time, looking at the theme, I was kind of worried. How can you make a good game based out of germ distribution? But as a non-germaphobe, once I realized what was happening and how the game played, I thought it was quite enjoyable. The mechanics fed the theme. The way, once you have a disease, you can spread that disease. Or if you have that same strain, you're kind of like a carrier where you have it, but you don't have it, so you could, through that strain, pass a disease that you may not have. And then the way they handled the player elimination, which is the key to the challenge, was you keep playing. You can't win. You cannot win. But other players may end up curing you. Once you're back down below that threshold, you can win again. And so I thought that was quite fascinating and that happened in one of our games where I was well over. The next thing you know, I'm back to even with you guys, and I'm back in contention. Yep. So I thought that was really fun. You have the, I'm out, I'm in, roller coaster of emotions.
That was clever.
But so I would offer a 1.75. I thought the theme played really well with the mechanics. Eric, what are your thoughts?
I would agree. The theme was definitely present. And you can tell by every card, between the antibiotics, the antibodies, and then the different strands of the different diseases or bacteria. And you can see on all the cards, and I mean, even once again, the back of the card being the cultures, the bacteria, which were still a little out of place, but I mean, the theme was definitely present. Not to mention, not to try to push on any germaphobes or anything, but as you're passing cards around, you're spreading more germs by just touching the cards, right? So
especially if you lick them every time.
I only did that twice.
I did it more than twice.
All right, so they're saying 175. I'm going to go ahead and abstain, but I am a germaphobe through and through. So playing this game kind of turned my stomach a little bit, but I'm an outlier, right? I would say maybe 4% of the population is a germaphobe, right? It started with the box, right? There's little germ things, and there's a medical blue with this off-white on the top. It just sort of turned my stomach. And every time it's oh, you got the flu and E. coli, and I'm the whole time. But most people won't react that way. There's cartoon pictures of the actual, strains of different things. So it was very cutesy the way they handled that, which was very good. That kind of brought me back out of nearly vomiting. But I didn't really enjoy the theme, but most people will.
Yeah.
So 1.75 stands.
So how about East to Learn? What are your thoughts?
For the most part, it was pretty easy. There were a couple of moments where someone didn't read the rules thoroughly.
I blame Brian.
One of us read the rulebook later and found what was happening wrong.
That was the problem. If you didn't read it, we would have right.
And I would have won twice.
Boom.
Sorry, I like to play games correctly.
But, yeah, I mean, overall, it was really easier to learn. I mean, once we figured out where the mistakes were and the mistakes we were taking, it was really easy to play, and it would be really easy to teach. So.
Oh yeah, I agree. It would be really easy to teach. I was a little surprised that there was 8 pages in the rule book, and it's 8-point font. Maybe it's more like 9, but it just seemed excessive for what needed to be there. There were several paragraphs on what happens when you're displaced. I think you could do that in 2 bullet points. But at 0.75, is that where you were headed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. 0.75 out of 1, I believe.
Yep.
Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, 0.75. The rule book is a bit wordier than necessary, but I think especially with games such as, when you're designing on a deadline, as these designers were, you don't have as much time to go through and fine-tune those rules. But we were able to figure it out, and like you mentioned, we could teach someone how to play this in minutes.
Yep.
So
I agree. All right, so go ahead.
I was kind of going to lead into the replayability.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead.
We could easily teach someone how, but how much do we want to? Replayability.
So out
Segue.
of 2, I gave it a 0.5 for replayability. That was a nice little shimmy, shake. I give it a 0.5 out of 2 because it seems like a very topical game, right? The theme is spreading diseases. Maybe not your gateway theme, but very funny, obviously. But I gave it 0.5 because of the randomness to it, right? So it's not going to vie for those strategy gamers, I guess. There isn't a whole lot of theme there other than we're spreading diseases of a limited 11 or so. And I guess the pacing was good, but beyond that, it seemed like it just didn't have the pull that would pull me back into a game, It's very much a filler game that once I've played it, there wasn't a whole lot of reason for me to come back, I guess. So I would give it a 0.5 out of 2. What do you guys think?
I agree. There are definitely other games that have similar mechanics. Not necessarily the same exact mechanics or anything, but similar in type, and I'd probably rather play those. The whole theme could be a turnoff to a lot of groups in games. Just like, hey, we're gonna pass around diseases tonight. I hope everyone's okay with that. And
then someone's like, yeah, like high school, right? No? Too soon? It's cool.
So yeah, thematically, if there was a party, a doctor's party or something like that this game might be a little more
That's hilarious.
appropriately inappropriate to play.
I'm picturing a bunch of doctors hanging around.
in my mind, they're still wearing lab coats. I don't know why.
Yeah, with red Solo cups.
Hey!
Watch this, play this, we'll have a Scrubs party. Watch Scrubs, we'll play in this. That would be fun. I would do that.
I'd buy that. Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree with you guys, and 0.5, I mean, it's replayable for a limited period of time. There are other filler games I think I would use to fill my time. But it's a game that, you pick up, you play it, you finish, you don't regret having played it by any means, but you're not like, let's play again right now!
Right.
But, next month if someone brings it to game night, yeah, I'll play another game.
I'd buy that. All right, so that gives us a score of 7 for Sneeze. So check it out at the Game Crafter. We'll have the note below, and this is part of our Gamers Remorse Killer Challenge contest. So stay tuned for those. No one tunes their PC. I don't know why I saved.
Tune in to the same YouTube channel. If you have an analog computer.
Anyway, see you guys.
So, let's start out looking at the look and feel of this game.
Just realized something. Time out. I think that's in screen.
Yeah, it's totally in screen.
I meant to hit R. No, it's an S. That's an S.
You have to